a conversation about CARICOM Caribbean regional integration with a former Deputy Secretary General of the CARICOM Secretariat. Don't go anywhere. CaribNation is up next. Welcome to CaribNation. I'm David Hinds here in Belize City. We've caught up with Dr. Carla Barnett, who has just returned to Belize after serving 6 years in the CARICOM Secretariat as the Deputy Secretary General of that Secretariat. We're going to talk to Dr. Barnett about some regional issues. We're going to ask her to shed some light as an insider, so we'll get the real scoop. Dr. Carla Barnett, welcome to CaribNation.
My pleasure, thank you. And welcome to Belize.
Thank you very much. I'm enjoying it. You know, it's similarities to Guyana, where I come from.
Quite so.
Both in terms of the physical layout and the multi-ethnic nature of the society.
Quite so, very similar.
Well, we want to talk to you more about CARICOM, regional integration. We'll touch on Belize a little bit. You've spent 6 years as the Deputy Secretary General.
Yes.
One of the highest offices. After 30 years, what would you say are the achievements of CARICOM?
The achievements of CARICOM are many. Perhaps they're not as great as people would expect, because we have very high expectations of ourselves as Caribbean people. And we have memories of things that we have tried and haven't worked, you know, like the Federation and all that, but we've achieved a lot. We've achieved the University of the Belize. We used to say one time we achieved the cricket team as well, but that's been going through its times.
Yes.
But I think above and beyond those symbolic things, we've achieved a very real closeness among Caribbean peoples. We know one another now a whole lot more. A lot of us have traveled throughout the region, and we're very comfortable in each other's countries. And so it's easier now to talk about integration than it was. Now it is not being demanded or tried by the politicians. It's the people, the ordinary people on the street who want it, who want to be in an arrangement that brings them closer to people in other parts of the Caribbean, which I think is a really big achievement.
Non-achievements? If there is such a term?
Well, in the political arena, I think a lot of people feel that we could work closer together. We still are a grouping of independent states with independent foreign policies, and therefore it is not always that we speak in one voice in the external arena. We're trying very hard in the era of external negotiations, because clearly there is one area where as a group we're much better than individually. But sovereignty still sometimes wins out, and therefore it's one of the areas that I think we haven't done as much as we could do.
In terms of the Secretariat, tell us what really is the job of the Secretariat?
It's largely the management of the integration process. In years gone by, it used to be seen primarily as administration of the community's business. So we convened the meetings, we did the research, we did the channeling of communications. In more recent times, in the 1997 restructuring, the Secretariat was given a more proactive role, so we are now able to raise issues for the consideration of heads of government and the community and other organs of the community, so that role has expanded a little bit, but we are chiefly responsible for organizing the business of the integration movement.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about some larger issues. The issue of size. Years ago, William Dimas, who's probably, one can say, one of the fathers of the integration movement, raised the question of size as it relates to the Caribbean. Speak to that issue.
We're all small countries, small in terms of population size, small in terms of land area. We're connected, all of us, by the Caribbean Sea, and if we count in the territorial seas, we are much larger than we think we really are. But we are very small in terms of size and in terms of population. That places us at a disadvantage in a number of ways. Right now, for example, in negotiating the various trading arrangements, we really do not have the capacity to keep up as individual member states, because when you go to these negotiations, the people across the table bring hundreds of people. The delegations that come from the large countries that sit around the table and say they are equal to us are not equal if you look at the numbers across the table and the level of technical expertise that they are able to mobilize. We are not, as individual states, able to do that, and therefore we begin the process of negotiation at a disadvantage, and we have to find ways and means of overcoming those disadvantages of size. There are certain advantages to size as well for small countries. In the Caribbean, our affairs tend to be easier to manage because we're small on a day-to-day basis. But the disadvantages for many people are really quite significant, and if they are not addressed, if we don't find ways and means of dealing with those disadvantages, then we really are, headed for troubled times in a lot of areas.
Yeah. William Dimas was very big on the deepening of the integration movement. Recently, I would say over the last 10 years or so, there has been an upsurge and a call for widening of the movement. Sometimes they tour in tension with each other. Speak a little bit about deepening versus widening, or deepening and widening.
It has to be both deepening and widening. Deepening refers to expanding the relationship that we have among ourselves into new areas. When the integration movement started, it was about trade in goods primarily. We had the CARIFTA, the free trade area, and we moved into the community. And now the community is moving into a single market and economy, so that is the deepening process. We're now talking about free movement of all goods and services and capital and persons, and that is the deepening process that we speak to. It's an important part of the integration process, because the single market and economy, as you would know, will give each member state a larger market, a larger economic space in which it can operate. Widening refers to expanding our relations. We widen by bringing in new members. So in the last 8 years, we brought in Suriname and then Haiti. So there are more members. But widening also refers to new relations with other countries. In the context of the ACS, for example, we have developed new kinds of relations with the countries of the Caribbean Basin in the context of the Association of Caribbean States. And again, that's an important process because it brings to the table along with us countries that are in similar circumstances, and we are then able to speak with a louder voice on the international arena.
There is a criticism that CARICOM has not really taken very seriously the Association of Caribbean States. Respond to that.
The Association of Caribbean States brings two sets of countries together, the countries of the Caribbean and the countries of Central America, and both sets of countries have to take responsibility for what the ACS has done or has not been able to do. The ACS isn't really about integration, it's about cooperation. It's a different concept, and the ACS has carved out for itself certain areas in which cooperation is supposed to take place. In the area of tourism, in the area of transportation, are the two major areas in which the ACS is supposed to be playing a role. The reality is that transportation is probably the single largest problem that the community has not been able to address effectively. As a community, let alone in the context of an ACS, two groups of countries that have not traditionally had transportation links. And so you're going against a tide, so to speak, and it really is a difficult problem to address. In the area of tourism, there are other organizations that play a role in tourism in the Caribbean that encompass all the countries of the Caribbean and others, of the ACS and others. We're talking, of course, about the CTO, and therefore tourism again is an area in which substantial work is being done in other places, and therefore the issue is how do you bring those areas of work together, make sure you're not duplicating the work, and make sure that everybody feels as if in fact they're getting something out of the arrangement. In neither of those areas, for all of those constraints, has the ACS been able to assert itself. But then the ACS is comprised of the countries, and so we can't say the ACS as a institution out there separate from the countries that comprise it. So is we in the ACS, we both Caribbean countries, CARICOM countries, and Central American countries, we in the ACS have not been able to deal effectively with those countries, with those issues.
You mentioned the question of sovereignty as one of the impediments to the really fast moving pace of the regional integration movement. In terms of how decisions are implemented, that is, each country has to take a decision back to its parliament, get it ratified there before it can be implemented. Do you think that the time has come when some kind of law should be passed, making decisions taken at the level of CARICOM, or some decisions taken binding on member states?
That's a lot of people want that. Some people point to that and call it the Achilles heel of the community, because decisions are taken, but then there's a second set of decision making that has to be done at the national level to implement the decisions at the regional level. The reality is that we are a grouping of independent states. Unless countries decide to cede some portion of their sovereignty, then you will not get that ability to create some mechanism to have regional decisions immediately enforceable at the national level. The reality is, as well, is that unless the people of the Caribbean, it is not something that can be done because a few people want it or even many people want it. It has to be that there is a decision of the people of the Caribbean that they want to do that. And I'm not so sure that we've had that discussion, a sufficiency of that discussion to make that a viable option at this time. I think if you travel through the Caribbean, we celebrate our West Indianness or Caribbeanness, but we all are of independent countries as well, and that is still important to many people in the Caribbean. That sovereignty issue is still very important, and until and unless people accept, agree, and want to move to a next level, and enough people demand it, I'm not of a view that we're going to go in that direction.
So you think that there needs to be some kind of elaborate conversation among the people themselves?
Yes. People have to talk about it. It may be that the community would want to initiate that discussion, much in the way it has initiated discussion of other issues, of the single market, of the Court of Justice. Some leaders have been talking about it recently. But the discussion has not been a sustained discussion, and unless you have a sustained discussion of that kind of issue, then it's not going to evolve into the establishment of any kind of authority above the national level.
The recent raising of the issue at the last Heads of Government Conference in Trinidad, and the forthright stance taken by Prime Minister Manning, is that cause for optimism?
It suggests, because he's the second leader to have raised it in recent times. The Prime Minister of St. Vincent had raised it, yes, the year before. It suggests to me that there is a recognition that some people are talking about it. There are others in the Caribbean who will not talk about it, but the fact that it's beginning to be talked about again suggests to me that maybe the ghosts of the Federation may finally be, you know, defeatable. Not defeated, defeatable.
Would you venture to say that the onslaught of globalization perhaps is the kind of catalyst for that kind of renewed discussion?
It may be, but it doesn't have to be. I wouldn't make that the definitive link. I would say that in this context, yes, it's a discussion that is bound to arise, but I wouldn't say that because of the way globalization is going, we are likely as a community to be moving towards closer political integration.
Let's talk a little bit about something that has bothered me, and I know it's bothered a lot of people. The whole question of intra-Caribbean, intra-CARICOM trade. Many people have said that one of the reasons that we've not had enough intra-Caribbean trade is the kind of competition and the fact that we produce the same kind of products and so on and so forth. Comment on that.
That's absolutely right. We have a similar economic history. We started out growing the same crops, selling the same crops to the same people. And as our economies evolved, we moved into the same kind of economic strategies that led us into the same kinds of manufacturing processes. We never really had a tradition of trading with each other. All of our countries, without exception, developed as economies that trade with the colonial power. In an era, as the free trade movement developed, I think people expected that because trade was free, that it would necessarily lead to the development of trade among ourselves, and one doesn't necessarily lead to the other. What we're seeing now, though, as many of our economies diversify, is a greater quantum of trade among ourselves, but still it's in a very narrow range of commodities. Because as a region we do not produce the full range of our needs within the region, so there will always be a need for us to trade outside of the region. I don't think, I am of the view that we cannot really measure the success of the community and then the single market by the level of trade among ourselves. Because the objective cannot be that we trade with each other. The objective has to be that we have a better quality of life as a community because of the arrangements that we have. And if that means that we get that through competitive trading with the outside world, that is what it means. That is what globalization will bring. So for me, it's not looking for greater trade among ourselves, greater relations, yes. But those relations do not necessarily have to be of a trading nature. The community is larger, much larger than the trading relations.
Free trade area of the Americas coming on stream shortly. Lots of sweating in the Caribbean. Why?
And rightly so. And rightly so. There is a sense that there may be some momentum that is likely to resurge in the north for an acceleration. Over the last year and a half, there seemed to have been a slowing down of the process, but there is a sense that in fact it may be looking to accelerate. We are at a grave disadvantage in the free trade area of the Americas and in the other trading arenas, but specifically in the free trade area of the Americas, because that's our backyard. That's where we trade. That's where we have to make a living. And we are the smallest countries in this hemisphere. Our main trading partner is the largest country in this hemisphere, and that is a country that has not seen it reasonable to discuss or to give due regard to the fact that we are small and we are disadvantaged around the table. There are big issues that have to be resolved. One of the biggest issues that we have to see resolved around the table is the issue of how we deal with agriculture. Although many of us have diversified into services, tourism services, financial services, agriculture is still the bedrock of a number of our economies. Our agriculture isn't half as subsidized as agriculture in the north, but we're not getting that discussion of how we deal evenly in agriculture around the table. It's not happening, and it will take some time to happen. And if we go through the negotiation process and not take those major inequities into account, at the end of the day, we're going to have a free trade area of the Americas agreement that deals with us inequitably as well. And we're not going to, our agricultural sectors are not going to survive that. That for me is the biggest threat. There are threats in other areas as well, but that is the one that is really up in your face at this time.
Our arrangement, historic arrangement with the Europeans through the Lomé Conventions, preferences coming to an end shortly.
Quite so.
That's something else that's going to impact on us. How?
Quite so. Well, it's already begun to impact on us. Anybody who grows bananas in the Caribbean knows how those things have impacted on us. And they are going to continue to impact on us in many ways. And we're not geared up within the context of the WTO to deal with the trading arrangements as they're evolving. And when you put that along with the negotiations that are going to take place now with the European Union, we're not geared up properly to bring all of those together all at once, which is what is going to happen. It's going to take a lot more organization. It's going to take a lot more mobilization of persons from countries. We're going to have to find ways and means of identifying the people who are going to lead in those negotiations for the Caribbean as a whole and equip them properly. We have a regional negotiating machinery that's a good core of people, but the R&M alone cannot do it. The member states have to now augment that organization with people of their own who can go with them and develop all of the technical work that needs to be done to inform those processes. Did
you enjoy your stint at the Secretariat?
Quite so. I stayed 6 years. I must have enjoyed it if I stayed that long. When I went for 3 years and I ended up staying 6.
Let me ask you this, as a woman operating in a man's arena, how did you find it?
It's always difficult. I would be not that. It is always difficult because women operate, when you're operating in an arena that is traditionally a male arena, there are certain standards of behavior, certain ways of making decisions, certain modus operandi that are considered normal that women don't normally deal with. I was having a discussion with a friend of mine recently, a woman who was saying to me the difficulty that she was having is that all of the decisions were being taken around the bar in the evening after work, and she doesn't do that. So how do you get to do that? I said, well, you have to make sure that you find a way of getting those decisions taken around the table. You know, well, we never had that problem in CARICOM. Our problem was more that people were out all of the time, and therefore it was more an issue of getting people around the table from wherever they may be. But as a woman in that kind of of environment, yes, it can be difficult at times. Yeah, but you have to deal with it, you know.
You're back in Belize now. What are you doing?
Yes. Right now, I am advising in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We're trying to do some work in the area of international cooperation. So that's where I am. And I'm also involved, of course, in my own family business, which is a farm and an ecotourism facility that we're developing.
What do you produce?
All kinds of fruit. And we're doing the fruit that you don't see on the market anymore, because for some reason the farmers have been producing what we take to be the traditional fruits, you know, the fruit that we grew up with as children. So we're having great fun doing that.
As we close, what advice would you give to young women, young people out there who want to get into public service but who are somewhat skeptical? For me, the choice facing young people really isn't whether you get into the public sector or the private sector. It's deciding what you want to do and equipping yourself properly to do it. We have a lot of good, very bright young people in the market who are looking for work, whether it's making their own jobs by creating some kind of business or working for somebody else, and they're really not adequately equipped. There's, I think, a gap that we've seen created across the Caribbean for young people. There really needs to be a great effort put into making sure that young people are properly equipped for the jobs. The business of academic training is fine, but you have to combine that with readiness for the workplace, with skills, life skills. A lot of our young people don't have life skills. They don't know how to manage money. They don't know how to manage family life. They don't know how to bring the two together. Somewhere along the line, we lost those, a good portion of it. And I would encourage young people, whatever you decide to do, whether it's public sector or private sector, equip yourself. Go to school, learn, read a lot. And on that positive note, Dr. Barnett, it's been a pleasure talking with you. You certainly shed some light on some very important issues for those of us in the diaspora who keep an active interest in what's going on in the Caribbean.
Thank you for having me, David.
Wow. Well, don't you love it when one of our Caribbean women can speak with such authority and confidence? Well, I do. Until the next time, this is David Hinds, thanking you for tuning in to yet another edition of Carib Nation. And remember, as always, our motto here is one people, one culture, one Caribbean, one nation.